There's no single path to recovery when it comes to healing emotional trauma, but all paths lead right to the thing you'd most want to avoid. To heal, you must make the brave choice that feels self-destructive. You have to go toward the pain, right? But how do you do that? How do you do that when you've already been suffering? When you're just a shell of who you were? And what if the pain is an actual physical discomfort? What if it itches every day, all over? The itching came later, but first, on March 8, 2004, a 16-year-old employee at my dad's restaurant carried out his plan to kill my father and rob the place. He came when he knew my dad would be alone, distracted him, hit him over the head with a hammer, and stabbed him 11 times with 2 hunting knives. My dad's fate was all the more shocking because of its contrast to how he lived his life. He was the last person you'd think anyone would want to harm. Even the teen became agitated when asked by the prosecuting attorney if my dad had done anything to provoke the attack. No, he said, Mr. Lacy was never anything but kind to me. Completely senseless. That's all it was and all it would ever be. I got counseling and spent the better part of a year trying to come out of a fog, but ultimately, without a way to make sense of it intellectually or spiritually, the trauma took up residence in my physical body. The layers of traumatic loss weighed on me figuratively, but also in a tangible felt sense. I experienced chest tightness and wheezing as the heaviness settled around my heart and lungs. The teen was caught the same day. 14 months after the murder, I sat with my family at the trial that became necessary when he refused the sentence bargain. I was re-traumatized by the details, but I couldn't not be there. I felt I owed it to my dad and my family. The trial lasted 3.5 days, and the jury deliberated for less than 40 minutes. The teen was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. A year later, around the time of the 2nd anniversary of the murder, there was no trial, nothing like the trial for me to focus on. There was no container for my grief. There was nothing to do. So one day, distracted and disconnected, I ran a red light a mile from my home and plowed into the driver's side of a turning vehicle. Fortunately, the driver wasn't seriously injured, and neither was I, but my already traumatized body was sent into overdrive. The adrenaline rush and shock were too much for my depleted system, and the following day I broke out in hives across my entire body. The itching got so bad I wept and had to go to a weekend clinic for some relief. I was prescribed prednisone for a few days and then advised to take over-the-counter antihistamines after that as needed, and I did need them daily for 10 months. I tried going off of the medication and sought other treatments during that time. More therapy, acupuncture, supplements, dietary changes, and more. Some remedies brought temporary relief, but nothing lasted beyond a day or two. I wasn't avoiding the trauma. At that point, I had been processing my grief and feeling the waves of emotion for years. I had great support from treatment providers, family, and friends, but still, my body wasn't well. What more did I need to face? How much more pain did I need to connect with? I came to understand that the hives were my body's attempt to push the trauma up and out of me, through my skin. But I couldn't let go. I held on to my symptoms. I held on to my symptoms as if they were my father. Not consciously, of course, but there he was, in the chest tightness, the wheezing, the migraines, and of course the hives. You see, my last emotional experience of my father in my life was the day he was killed. That was our last connection, and it was a powerful one, awful beyond anything imaginable, but real, intense, with weight and substance. My symptoms were a constant reminder of my loss, and therefore a constant reminder of him. As I continued to suppress the itching with medication, my other ailments grew worse. The chest tightness continued at night, and the wheezing, and one cold after another. And then in January 2007, I had 6 migraines, the most I'd ever had. I was engaged to be married that August, and I really didn't want to be all hivey and wheezy on my wedding day. It had all become completely unbearable and unacceptable. I desperately wanted to be healthy and whole and me again. In dealing with chronic hives for nearly a year, I kept asking myself 2 questions. The first was the obvious: how do I stop the itching? I felt if I could just stop the itching, that would mean my body was well and I'd be healed. The problem was the solutions I came up with only suppressed the itching. The second, equally ineffective question was, why can't I heal? This question made me feel like there was some magic combination or password I hadn't yet hit upon, or worse, that something was so broken in me I might never be able to heal. The right questions seemed to elude me. If I could go back knowing what I know now, I would have brainstormed lots and lots of questions, derivatives of the old ones, and brand new, even nonsensical ones. As it was, the question that came forward of its own volition was, what's on the other side of the itching? This was a brilliant question, trust me. It had a curious, adventurous tone to it. It wasn't about suppressing or self-reproach. It seemed to be about the way through. To imagine that I was here and the itching was there and there was a place on the other side where I was healthy and whole was incredible. What's on the other side? To find out, though, I had to bring the itching back. I had to go toward the pain. So I decided to stop taking the medication. And the itching returned almost immediately, although mercifully not as bad as when the hives first appeared. One night I was watching TV with my fiancé, my wonderful, loving, and patient partner. I was scratching away at my arms, annoyed by the sandpapery ch-ch-ch sounds. He said, "Will you just go take a pill?" And there it was, the choice, the opportunity to stay the course or go back to avoiding and suppressing. No more pills. I decided it was me or the hives, and I was going to keep right on itching for as long as I needed to. The very next day, I was driving to work, and at a stoplight, I looked up and saw a giant construction crane tilting toward the ground. An earthquake? I put the car in park and got ready to jump out when I noticed something really odd. People were crossing the street like nothing was happening. Nothing was happening to them. I was tilting. It was an intense vertigo incident. I'd never had vertigo before and never since. In the ambulance, I was incredulous. What now? At the hospital, I started shaking uncontrollably from head to toe. The nurses kept piling blankets on top of me. And as I shook, cocooned in the blankets, I felt calm. I knew I was okay. I was healing. The shaking, I would later learn, was indeed my body's way of healing the trauma. Neurogenic tremors are an innate physiological response to calm the body following a state of hyperarousal, but it's a response that we can shut down by clenching our bodies, often unconsciously. And that's exactly what I had done. I had been holding it all in, keeping myself locked in fight, flight, or freeze. After the vertigo incident, the itching was gone. The rest of my symptoms faded one by one, and in August that year, I had a hive-free wedding day. I don't know what brought that question forward, what's on the other side, but in the end, I knew that I could let go of my symptoms because they weren't my father. My physical symptoms had nothing to do with the love we shared or who he was. I could be healthy and whole and me and still love him and still honor his memory. This is our real connection. Our forever father-daughter bond was not broken the day he was killed. Ultimately, my healing came, not because I'm particularly brave, but because I finally saw that everything I was doing to avoid the pain wasn't making me well, quite the opposite. And it seems obvious now, but trauma had fooled me into thinking that it was protecting me. It had built a fortress to my unique specifications, and the longer I was there, the more the walls closed in, until the protection became my prison, until I was itching to get out. In his novel, The Stand, Stephen King wrote, "No one can tell what goes on in between the person you were and the person you become. No one can chart that blue and lonely section of hell. There are no maps of the change. You just come out the other side, or you don't." What was on the other side of the pain? Me, forever changed, but all in one piece, at peace. Thank you.